You know how every once in a while you cross paths with someone and you wonder why you've never met this person before? In this episode of The Teacher's Classroom, we're going to take a slight detour so that I can introduce you to Kim Darche, who is definitely someone you should know.
Welcome to The Teacher's Classroom, the podcast that explores current topics in education with your host, Matt Weld.
So Kim, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Kim Darche. I'm an instructional coach in Lamont Brown Barrack School District, which, if you're not familiar with the area, it's not Chicago and it's not down south. So we're in the southern suburbs. The largest city that we're around is Joliet. So that's kind of where you could place me in the state of Illinois. I always loved those people who lived in Michigan. And have you ever seen the thing where they hold their hand up, which is great for radio or podcasting, by the way, and they point to where in Michigan they live? I think we need one of those for Illinois.
Well, right. Yeah.
So just like a square.
And everyone, where I live, they would just point to the floor because...
I actually know O'Fallon, believe it or not. You're still down that way, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So I actually know O'Fallon. One of my former superintendents was a superintendent down that way, so I'm very familiar with it.
Okay, good.
But, okay, back to me. Sorry.
Yes, back to you, Kim.
Enough about you, Matt. It's 8 in the morning about me. So when I'm not an instructional coach here in Lamont, I'm an adjunct professor at Trinity University or Trinity Christian College, and then also at the University of St. Francis. Most recently, I took up the role as the conference coordinator for IETC, which is the Illinois Technology and Education Conference.
And that's we're going to talk about that today too, because, I'm the coordinator for the Directions Conference down this way. Mm-hmm. So, maybe we can swap some war stories or something. I know your conference is coming up, so we're going to...
in 11 days. That's insane.
Right. Yeah, and at least my conference is 10 minutes from my house.
Yep.
Right? And yours is halfway across the state.
It is.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes in 11 days. You'll be here though, Matt. So you'll see.
I will. I'm just coming for a day. I'm just driving in for a day though on whatever day I present. Thursday,
very glad to have you.
Well, thank you. So if we could start at kind of more toward the beginning, so what's your career path? Because you're an instructional coach now, but usually instructional coaches don't start there. Mm-hmm. Right.
So I've had a very, the older you get, you just realize how long your career has been. Yesterday, I showed my undergrad students my resume, and it's 3.5 pages long. And they're like, oh, my gracious. I'm like, well, I've been around for a while. So, you have gone through a lot of iterations of your job. So I began at a Catholic school, and I taught there for a little under a decade. And from there, I went to the Chicago Public School Systems, where I was their computer teacher. And that's really where I found this passion for working with educators, because I had won a grant for iPads for the entire 5th grade. Every student in 5th grade was given an iPad. And this is way back in the day before one-to-one was really anything that anyone gave a nod to.
Right.
And I was a part-time in the lab and part-time with teachers. And I realized I had this incredible desire to work with adult learners. And that kind of put me on my trajectory of where I've landed as an instructional coach. From there, I've been in the district office, in suburbs. I actually was a coach at a private independent school in Old Town in Chicago, where it would cost a kindergartner $25,000 a year to go to school there.
Oh my goodness, that's more than we pay for my son at Mizzou.
Right. So that job was short-lived for me. It just wasn't my environment. I was really out of my element. The teachers were great. The students were great. It was just, I had a greater passion to get back into the public school system. That's just where I found my passion. So from there, I did one more job at another suburban school, and then I landed here at Lamont. And I work under, my superintendent is Dr. Courtney Orzel, and I'm incredibly grateful to have a seat. That's why my name's all over. It's because Courtney is my superintendent.
Gotcha. Yeah, because her name's all over the place too. Yeah.
But I'm incredibly grateful to have such a really impressive and empowered leader at the helm of this district, which makes me so passionate to do as much as I can to build this environment up to be as innovative as possible.
So did she come find you and recruit you?
No, absolutely not. I applied for the job and it was just fate. And she said, I'll never forget, because she said, I can't pay you what you're worth. And I said, but I really want this job. And that was it. Okay. And that was 5 years ago. So
clearly money doesn't drive you. And you mentioned a little bit about wanting to work with adult learners. What drives Kim?
What drives me is really the adults I work with. The teachers here at Old Quarry Middle School, which is where I'm primarily based, are some of the smartest, most hardworking individuals that I've ever come across with in all of my teaching and learning. So that really is what pushes me, is seeing these adults be reflective and grow in their practice. There is nothing better than experience that growth of someone in the educational field who really becomes this reflective educator and then takes their own reflections and then tries something different in their classroom.
Was that culture there when you started, or were you part of creating that?
So it was a lot. Lamont here, way before I had got here, had gone through some financial troubles where the teachers were teaching 42 kids in the classroom. All of their encores were cut. There was no music. There was no art. There was nothing. And they really bonded and banded together as a staff. And they have been together like that since way before I was here. When I came in, I did attempt to get them to be more innovative. That was the piece that really I strived in pushing them to be. So, how do you take what's really good and make it really great, to steal a line from Jim Collins?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was a tech coach, not an instructional coach, but that's one thing I struggled with was there wasn't like a district-wide culture of personal reflection and innovation. So, yeah. So
it's really crazy when you see teachers commit to reflecting on their practice, looking for different avenues in which they could grow that teaching and learning, and then see it work. Like, it's crazy and so special to be a part of.
Yes. Yeah. And so you are teaching as an adjunct professor then new teachers, right? Pre-service?
Both. So at Trinity Christian College, it is really job shifters. So a lot of paraprofessionals are in there. Some people who got a degree in one area then realized they wanted to go back and be a teacher. And then at the University of St. Francis is where I teach at the graduate level. And it's mostly people going for their master's. Okay.
So when you're working with undergraduates or people going back to get a teaching certificate, because that's what I did. Like, I didn't have one from undergrad. I went back when I was 30.
Gotcha.
So what do you tell them? Like, when you show them your resume and or you're giving them, pieces of advice, what would you say your number one piece of advice for new teachers is?
So my piece of advice for everyone, regardless if you're a new teacher or whatnot, I've heard it someplace. I can't find the source of this. I did not make it up, but it is a statement that I live by. And that is to have tea with everyone. And it really speaks volumes to me, is that I never close off an opportunity to talk with someone or to reach out to them, because you never know in your path of finding that perfect career who's going to make that impactful difference with you, or who's going to change your perspective that day that you didn't think was going to happen. So I live by have tea with everyone.
Well, and it's crazy that, and that's my favorite part about conferences is all the cups of tea you get to have with people, and you never know when they're going to come back around.
Absolutely.
Right? It's crazy. So,
Or how they say that one piece of that one statement that just changes your thinking in a way you didn't think was possible. At ITC, I've been going there. I've been presenting there for decades. I've talked about how much I've enjoyed it even before I took over as coordinator. And Mandy Ellis, who is the Dunlap principal, she actually just won an award for the Dunlap, or the outstanding principal for the ROE down by her. She came into one of my sessions and I presented, and they were a lovely group of individuals that were there. And from that day forward, I have reached out to her multiple times to ask about culture or to have a question that answer that I was stuck on. And she's always been generous enough to offer some sage advice. That would have never happened had we not been in the same place at that same time.
Well, and then you'd been open to obviously a conversation that happened.
Yeah.
After your presentation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was good. Now, for new teachers, yesterday is my favorite class of the whole semester that we go through. I ask every participant in the class 2 interview questions, and then we give them feedback. Because my most important job for undergrads is I want to get you a job. Like, I want you to be working when you are done. And so I ask them all 2 interview questions. And my favorite question to ask always is, what are you currently reading? Because 9 times out of 10, what do you think those students say back to me?
I would say they're not reading.
Yes. And it makes me crazy, man. Like, absolutely crazy. They're like, well, I don't like to read. I'm like, nope, make it up. Say you read the shampoo bottle. I really don't care. But they don't have this sense of awareness going into an interview. They're just being very honest. I said, but you do read. And if you don't, you really should as an educator. So that's one of my favorite classes to offer.
Speaking of it, this is totally off tangent, but I finished a book last night called Believe Me by J.P. Delaney. I finally said, okay, I'm just going to read a fiction book. I need something.
Is it good?
Great book.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you like Gone Girl type of thing where you never know what's going to happen next. Oh my God.
So good.
Check it out.
I'm going to.
Yes.
I just finished Where the Crawdads Sing. I did jump on that band.
Oh yeah. I read that this summer.
It was really good. Now I'm in, we have a big initiative here in the school about reading. SD 113A reads. So I have a couple YA and middle school books going on now.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to take it. I'm going to Believe Me.
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay, back on track.
Yeah. So, but yes, just to close on your point about reading, I totally understand, because I'll talk to people about books or whatever, and I read so many education books. You know, part of it's because I have a book study going on Teach Illinois, like all the time. And so I have a stack, right? But I think people, if you're going to be teaching kids to love reading, you better love it yourself.
Or you better learn to fake it real well. Better learn to read like a good 15 pages, and then you better be able to like speak on that book.
Yeah. But it's hard to fake it. Like,
it is.
Kids can spot a faker in 2 seconds.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. But there are certain books that I haven't read all the way through, but I can take a quick skim of a book
Sure.
a kid book and be like, you know what, this really looks like you'd get into it. And I show them how I preview books. So if I'm not going to read a whole book the whole way through, I do show students how I pick a book off the shelf, how you preview it, and go from there. So to me, that can be just as valuable. But I am a reader through and through.
And so you teach from undergraduate to graduates, and your career has spanned from teacher to classroom teacher to instructional coach to professor. So how have you changed over the course of your career? Your perspective on, I don't know, education or life in general?
I feel like I'm in a therapy session, man.
And you can either make something up or say, I don't want to answer that question.
I really think how it has changed is the idea of slowing down and being where your feet are. So even though I do wear a lot of hats, I try to have as much personal communication with teachers as possible. And I really stress when I work with administrators or other teachers, it's about that accountability and transparency piece. The more accountable I hold myself and I hold others, the more transparent of what I could share with adult learners, the more this idea of trust and relationship grows. So I try to send as few of emails as possible. I'm much more about going to find the person to talk to them, because you just have this greater understanding of who they are, as opposed to long emails or newsletters or stuff that people won't read. I'd rather find them and have a conversation with them.
Well, and I think things can get misread from an email. Right. So I know when I was assistant principal, I would do the same thing. If it was something about especially where kid matters or instructional matters, I would go have a conversation because body language and then the conversation can keep going. It's not just the one fact that you wanted to get across in the email. And that's sometimes where the important stuff happens, right? Is what the follow-up. You don't expect it. Right. Yeah.
And I've also really leveraged questions more. So back when I began teaching, I thought, and I was a good teacher. I was that teacher who had the most creative things, and my evaluations were always excellent, and it was great. But I was lacking something. You know, I was a good student. I knew how to play school. I liked school, all of that good stuff, but I was lacking something. So as a coach, I have really developed a way of building more and more questioning into my conversations. And in fact, another one of my favorite podcasts is called 1% Better. In that podcast, I actually interviewed the host, and it was 45 minutes of me asking him questions about anything, all my typical questions. So that's pretty exciting to have that avenue to build on also.
Yeah. That kind of leads us down to IETC, which is coming up in 14 days.
11.
Is that what you said?
11.
11. Oh, my God.
It kept seeming so far off when it was in November, but like tomorrow is November. So there's that.
So, do you have people in Springfield? Because you're up near Chicago, but the conference is in Springfield. Do you have people down there who can work with the Crowne Plaza, the venue, or are they just amazing and
they're pretty amazing,
experienced with this conference and stuff like that?
They're pretty amazing. So the conference, we're in our 26th year. So they've been at the Crowne for all of those years. And Tim, who's the conference coordinator, or the conference co-chair with John Clausen, really have it down to a science of all the working pieces. So I just came in and pulled in some new kind of avenues for learning and worked my way through how to become a conference coordinator. I learned a lot of lessons this year. So I've grown a lot because this has been a new avenue for me. I've always organize smaller conferences like ed camps in the area, but nothing on this scale. So it's incredibly exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Right. Because, so, I was part of the St. Louis Ed Camp planning committee for several years. And, but then hosting a for-profit conference is totally different because you have to worry about vendors and registration and
meals and bottles of water and projectors and keys to certain rooms and crazy.
Right.
What do you think is the toughest part? What was your when you were coordinating it or working with the committee? What was the hardest decision you had to come to?
I think when we moved venues, because we started out in Collinsville, and then just last year we moved back up here into O'Fallon, and finding a new venue. Right, we visited several, and then really taking the emotion out of it because I liked the people I was working with in the previous one, and then gently letting them down, saying, it's it's
so hard.
You guys were great, but so I think that was the hardest thing. It ended up for the better. I think our conference is better for the move, but. I haven't really had to fire anybody or no one's not showed up. The keynotes have always shown up and whatever, but right.
And to me, that was the most difficult part was choosing the keynotes because I'm always so critical of keynotes when you go, you're always oh my gosh, this person didn't do it or they missed the message or they weren't a good presenter. So I have an insane amount of pressure I'm putting on these keynote speakers because they can't mess it up.
Right.
That's what I'll told them. I'm okay, you can't mess it up just to let you all know. So
well, and people come to conferences, I think, to be entertained by the keynote. Right. And so the keynote speaker may have an incredible message, but if they can't deliver it in a way that's engaging for 300 people or 600 people.
We have 600 people sitting in front of them.
Yeah, mine's only 300, but so
it's still a lot. So I don't care. By the time once you hit 300, it's on the same scale. It's insane.
Yeah.
We have Micah Shippey coming on Thursday, and he does bring humor to his keynote. So I'm excited to see that. In one of our email communications, he asked if he could have flames and live horses in his keynote. I did have to tell him no, but I'm excited to
At least you could probably put that off on the venue. It's not my rule. I'd love to have it.
Right. So I did ask him if he needed a costume change or if he would be in his leather pants the whole time, but he was good. So I'm looking forward to that. And then on Friday, we're trying something different. And this is where I cross my fingers and
I'm into trying something different. Every year there's something different. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have 3 mini keynotes going on for Friday, and at ITC they have it over lunch. So there'll be 3 keynotes there. And we have Joy Kerr, Julie Smith, and Michael Matera. So we have 3 different perspectives, 3 different types of speakers, all compiled into one.
Yeah, that's great. Julie's a friend of mine.
But it was a terrible choice. I love
and she's amazing. Yeah, she'll be fantastic. And Michael's coming to Directions this year too. He's actually our headline speaker this year. But yeah, it sounds like you got some great ones. And
Julie's funny.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Well, she better be that day. Yeah. So she's great. So I'm looking forward to that on Friday.
Yeah. And so you said 600 people are going to be there. I think one of the things that I was surprised at when I started coordinating a conference was the vendor part. And I think a lot of people don't understand all the pressures, to have vendors so that you can keep the registration price down. Right. And then B, they're there for a reason, their own reasons that might. And so as a conference goer, you're like, oh, I'm going to go around and see the vendors. But then when you have vendors sign up for your conference and there's all these things that they expect as a vendor. So yeah.
It's crazy.
It's interesting.
That was an area that I just, and luckily we have two wonderful people who've worked on it for the past decade plus. So we have a sponsor, because you have your sponsorships and then you have your exhibitors. So it really is, that was a whole new world to me. And our conference is unique. We really do feed people. So someone who's signing up for the conference has breakfast both days, that's included in their registration, has lunch both days, that's included in their registration, and Friday is a banquet plated lunch on top of a Thursday night reception.
Well, and I don't think conference goers understand how much those meals cost.
Correct. Oh, don't even get me started. It's so expensive. I'm like, I'll bring my grill and just make some hot dogs. Like, it's okay.
Can I cater something? I will be the caterer if you'll pay me this much.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. Super crazy. But it is. I mean, the amount of meals, and our conference is really affordable, and Tim makes sure that it stays that way. The conference registration just about covers the cost of the meals if someone's coming for all, both days and all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So nuts.
And then it's expensive. I always, for my presenters, I give them registration for both days of the conference.
Same with IETC. Which is generous. I think, but I feel it's the least I can do. Right. Because I've always with ISTE and stuff, and I know everyone's got to, pay for the venue and they're on a much even ridiculously larger scale. But there wouldn't be a conference without the presenters. You wouldn't have sessions. You wouldn't have that. So for me, it just seems right. And it used to be the norm, and we've gotten away from that.
Yeah. And as a person who presents around like you, you put so much time into your presentation, days, right? And so, yeah.
Well, no, I totally agree.
But I think for a lot of conferences, they're looking at even doing away with that, or some people make it just the day you present type of thing, which I get, so.
No, I totally understand. But as teachers, we're given so few perks. To me, this is just one of those perks. I mean, the first time I was paid $25 to present, in a gift card, an Amazon gift card. I'm like, I'm rich. I have been paid for my work. It's crazy.
I'm not a professional.
It's fantastic. And then you go to price out some keynotes. They're like, $30,000 for a 60-minute keynote. I'm like, oh my God.
Right. And then you're like, okay, I am in the wrong profession.
Absolutely. But anyway, it's a great experience. A couple newer things we're bringing to the conference this year is we have something called IETC Interactive, which is a corner within, and it'll be there both Thursday and Friday of the conference. So the coaches of Dunlap, Stephanie Crawford, Stephanie Pitzer, and Jody Gordon will be running this ongoing place where people can just walk up, create something, learn how to use a green screen, and then go back to their conference experience. We wanted something that people could flow through without it being a traditional poster session, but actually have some guidance through activities. So they have a ton designed for that. Carrie Bachman, who just wrote a book, The Pencil Made Me Do It, she has designed, which you will see Thursday when you're coming, coloring books that will be on the keynote table that actually teach you how to sketchnote, along with some funky drawing and coloring activities.
I saw that on Twitter and I'm really excited.
And it is beyond good. I put the idea in her head and she outdid herself in nobody's business. Yeah, you're going to love it.
Yeah, that's exciting. Okay.
Yeah, you're going to love it. So that's really
so can people still register?
People can still register. Yep. It's one of the most affordable conferences around. They can register up into the day. I don't have the exact cost of the conference in front of me, but yes, we still have room for folks. The hotel is sold out, but there are other hotels in the area. I always say this conference is like a sleepover and a warm cookie. Like I always get that warm and fuzzy vibe from this conference.
Right. Yeah, I've been to it. I think this will only be year 3 for me, but yeah.
It's pretty great.
But it's definitely a good one.
It has a good vibe and all of that good stuff with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that you try something new every year, I think is really cool.
Our reception.
So you never
know what's coming.
Never know quite what to expect.
And this year, our reception is a barbecue theme. So we're bringing in cornhole and oversized Jenga and all of that good stuff. So we have lots of surprises each and every time. And we're all about bringing the fun back to a lot of these conferences. So we want someone to walk in and have a blast for 2 days.
Yeah, that's great. And did I see something about a podcast, a live podcast or something that's going on?
We will have 2 podcasters. One will be Matt Jacobson. So on Thursday, he'll be roaming the conference, getting some takes off of folks, how they're enjoying their experience. And then on Friday, we have Kevin Michaels and Julie Powell, who you'll be able to sign up, and people will sign up to tell their story. So...
Oh, fantastic.
I think I have the days reversed. Julie and Kevin are Thursday, and then Matt is Friday.
Yeah, that's cool too.
And I can count on you doing it next year, right?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to.
So I'm just thinking what 2020 is going to be.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. This one hasn't even happened yet, and you're always already making notes for next year. Yeah, I know. I understand.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah, so crazy.
Yeah. Well, Kim, this has been a great conversation. You are at school, so I probably need to let you get back to, instructional coaching maybe. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's Halloween and it's a half day. So today was a pretty good day to take a break and do this with you. Well,
good. Well, I appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to connecting with you in real life at the conference.
Yeah.
And
in 11 days, Matt, did I let you know it's happening in 11 days.
Right. All right. Well, Kim, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're doing great things, and thank you for that too.
For this episode's show notes, past episodes, or how you can earn professional development hours for listening, visit teachillinois.com, your online portal for teacher learning. Thanks for listening.